some big projects. The thing we just had a paper accepted just the last couple of days for publication on with minor revisions that we're finishing up. It's a paper that is trying to connect consciousness with physics in a rigorous fashion. So the physicists have discovered that space and time are not fundamental. As David Gross, the Nobel Prize winner, put it in 2005, space-time is doomed. And he gave reasons why space-time is doomed. And so the hunt is on for structures beyond space-time. And just the last 8 years, they found them. In 2014, they published something called the amplituhedron and decorated permutations. These are structures not inside space-time. They're not curled up inside little dimensions of space-time. These are structures utterly and completely beyond space-time. And space-time is a trivial projection of these deeper structures. And you get quantum field theory computations becoming much more simple when you let go of space-time. Quantum field computations become trivial, and you see new symmetries in scattering amplitude data that you couldn't see inside space-time. So it's really over for space-time, and the gold rush is on to find out what's beyond space-time. And they're finding some wonderful stuff. So this is all in the last decade that physics, at least high energy physics, there's still a lot of people doing space-time physics, of course, but the high energy people who are the ones who really need the better tools, they're done with space-time. They're beyond it. So this gave us an opening. We said, look, the physicists say that space-time is doomed. We've been saying that from our own points of view about consciousness, and they give us a structure beyond space-time that they found. So I said, let's connect with that. Can we take our mathematical model of conscious agents and connect with this structure beyond space-time? So decided to try doing that about 6 months ago. And we did it. We found the decorated permutations. It turns out we discovered that there's a canonical way to take Markovian dynamics and project them onto decorated permutations. So that was apparently a new contribution to the mathematics. It was the one that we needed to make because our dynamics of conscious agents is Markovian. So the paper just got accepted. It shows how to take our Markovian dynamics of conscious agents, project it down into space-time using decorated permutations with this new map that we came up with.
Wow.
And as a result, we make a new postulate, and then I'll stop and our postulate is that we propose that a particle in space-time, an elementary particle like bosons, leptons, and quarks, those are the current elementary particles, that those are actually projections of so-called communicating classes of conscious agents. And that particular proposal is precisely because of this mapping with decorated permutations. It dictates that has to be the correspondence. Particles are projections of communicating classes of Markovian dynamics. So we're now working on the follow-up paper. Now is to get momentum, mass, spin, all these things porting down from the theory of conscious agents into space-time and predicting specific scattering amplitudes with specific dynamics of conscious agents. So it's conscious imperialism. We want to show that all of physics is just a projection. In fact, not just a projection, it's an artifact of the projection of consciousness. Even our perception of particles is an artifact of projection, not an insight into the deep properties of reality. So that's.
What would you say? It's very impressive what you say, Don, and I haven't the advantage of having been able to research what you're researching. I might well not understand it if I tried. But what would you say to the idea that this looks like a process whereby everything of reality is stripped away? And this is, of course, your title. And this leaves the ordinary person, philosopher, physicist, or simply the everyday guy on the Clapham omnibus, with a problem, which is that some things must be considered more real than others. And there must be something that our consciousness has some awareness of, other than purely itself. This process seems like one in which you have done what Bertrand Russell said mathematics and physics did, which was simply to strip all the reality from the world, from the cosmos, and produce a very thin texture of equations and numbers. Now, if you do that, then you go, oh, goodness, reality's disappeared. I find this a little bit worrying, because I don't know how you can even say anything in English rather than just an equation without involving space and time. Space and time are the fundamental ways in which we structure everything we think. And so, yes, of course, you can invent an abstract Platonic realm in which everything's been disappeared by some clever math. But I suspect this is not getting closer to a truth, but further and further away from it. I'm a follower of Lee Smolin, who says, I mean, he's a great physicist, he can't be dismissed, who thinks there is nothing more real than time. And if you start dismissing time, you've lost the plot, basically.
Right. So those are, of course, very, very natural objections to raise. And so I would respond in two different directions. One is that for the physicists who are doing this, right, what they're finding is that it's space-time that is full of unrealities. For example, the ghostly particles that you get from in Feynman diagrams. So these virtual particles that are created and annihilated, and you have to add them all up to get these scattering amplitudes. It turns out that they're not needed, and they're just a distraction. When you let go of them, then hundreds of pages of algebra turns into 3 terms that you can compute by hand, and you get the right scattering amplitudes. So space-time is actually hiding the truth. It's not showing you the truth. It's actually, and the ghost particles that we get with Feynman diagrams are literally just nonsense and not needed. So when you get rid of them, and then you're finding new symmetries that are true. So you're finding that something called the infinite Yangian symmetry is actually true of our observations at the colliders, and you cannot see that directly in space-time. It can't be represented in space-time. So on the physics side, what they're finding is letting go of space-time is actually getting them closer to some quote-unquote truth, not further. And they're finding out what parts of space-time are irrelevant. But from a phenomenological perspective and a psychological perspective, our theory of conscious agents takes conscious experiences at first hand. It says conscious experiences are real. A headache is a real experience. And so our experiences are not dismissed. In fact, we take them as fundamental. And so in some sense, our approach to conscious experiences takes them as more central and more real than most physicalist approaches, where they say that the brain is fundamental and brain activity gives rise to the conscious experiences, and really conscious experiences are nothing but brain activity represented in certain ways. And I say, well, those theories have failed to explain even one specific conscious experience. There's no integrated information pattern that could be the taste of chocolate. There's nothing on the table. It's all stipulation.
All right.
I completely